I've been trying to find a mobile gaming controller to replace my Razer Kishi since I upgraded to an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the Gamesir G8 Galileo, and we're going to see if this is a contender for anybody that upgraded to an iPhone 15 series device. Taking a closer look at the Gamesir G8 Galileo, this controller feels really good in the hand. It feels really solid. The build quality is good. In the middle here, you'll see we have some rubber texture. It does come with a USB-C port that is movable, which is kind of nice for getting your device in and out of the controller. The joysticks feel good. We have full rotation. The D-pad feels good. Everything about this controller just feels really good. Moving over to the back, we do have some textured gripping on the sides as well as mappable buttons on the back. And one thing that I really wish they would have done is added some texture here to the sides of the triggers and the bumpers instead of just being on the very top of the trigger and then on the back side of the bumper. The controller itself has an Xbox style button layout in terms of A, B, X, Y, and then along the bottom we have a USB-C port with pass-through charging capabilities as well as a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now one thing that I really like about this controller is it has a trick up its sleeve and it has removable joysticks. So the package itself comes with 5 different joysticks. You get 2 standard height concave, a mini convex, as well as a standard convex, and then you get a slightly taller concave joystick. Swapping these out is really easy. All you need to do is pull the covers off the top of the controller, and then the joysticks themselves just pull straight up and off. From there, all you need to do is choose which joystick you want to replace it with. You line the bottom of the joystick up, and then push them into place. Reinstall the magnetic covers, and you're good to go. And it's as easy as that. The game controller has 3 different modes which you can use it in, and you can tell which mode the controller is in by looking at the LEDs that are on the bottom left and the bottom right of the controller. Now white is going to be for PlayStation mode, and that is the mode we're in because that's the only mode that allows this device to work on an iPhone. To change the mode, you just hold the menu button and the screenshot button here at the top to change the mode, and you'll see now we are in green, which is for Android games. And then if we do it one more time, it will turn blue for G-Touch. Now G-Touch is for games that don't support a controller natively, and it allows you to map buttons for those games. Now one thing that is interesting about this controller is you'll see here it says that we're ready to play even though we've switched back to PlayStation mode or white. But when we launch a game in Amazon Luna, and this is the same for any games, it does not work and it doesn't recognize it. The only way to get this to work is to make sure you have it set in the correct mode. So you will have it in PlayStation mode for us iPhone users, and then you're going to want to disconnect the controller completely, close out of all the applications or the game that you're trying to play, and then reconnect the controller in order to get it to work. And we've just done that, and you will see now that we are playing Assassin's Creed Origins, and we don't have any issues with the controller working at all. Switching over to Call of Duty Mobile, I didn't have any issues with this game working. I didn't have to map any buttons, I didn't have to do anything, it just worked right out of the box. One thing that is interesting is I did think that the sensitivity on the controller for Call of Duty Mobile specifically was a little too slow. I tried to adjust it in the game settings, but I just didn't feel like I could get it right. This is completely user preference, and overall I didn't have any issues with the controller in Call of Duty Mobile. Moving over to Apple Arcade, you will see that the controller does work with Apple Arcade games, but because we are in PlayStation mode, you will see that the buttons are showing up as PlayStation buttons instead of the actual layout of the controller, which is Xbox buttons. Now I did find that in Amazon Luna and Xbox Cloud Gaming Service that they do show up as Xbox buttons instead of PlayStation buttons, despite the phone thinking that we have a PlayStation controller connected. But it is worth noting that any Apple Arcade game you play, whether it's the one I'm showing here or I'll even show you another one, it will say that we have PlayStation buttons. I do think that that is a negative for the controller because it's not an accurate representation of the actual buttons on the controller, but as long as you know where the PlayStation buttons are, if you've ever used a PlayStation controller before, you shouldn't have any issues because functionally it doesn't take away from the controller at all. Moving over to the Xbox Cloud Gaming service, we're going to load up an instance of Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, and you'll see that we don't have any issues using the controller on the Xbox Cloud Gaming platform. I do still feel like the sensitivity is just slightly low though when using this with Call of Duty Mobile and the Xbox Cloud platform, but again, that's just personal preference. Functionally, the controller was sound and I didn't have any issues using it for any of the services that I've showed you so far. I don't have PlayStation's competitor to the Xbox Cloud Gaming service, so I can't show you that, but the manufacturer does state that the controller should work for that service as well. Gamesir offers an app for both iOS and Android for their gaming controllers. But unfortunately for us, for the Gamesir G8 Galileo, it is not listed at all in their application. And in fact, if you look here, most of the game controllers they have here aren't even mobile game controllers that are supposed to be compatible with the iOS app. So I wasn't able to do anything or any kind of testing with the iOS version. Now, if we switch over to Android, you will see that we didn't have any issues connecting to the Gamesir app on an Android device. I am using a Pixel 2 XL. We did have to put the controller in Android mode, which is green, in order to get this to work. But you will see we have our firmware version at the top, and then at the bottom we can do firmware upgrade, calibrate now, gamepad test, and key settings. If we select firmware upgrade, it just checks to see if there's an update. If you needed to calibrate, which I recommend you do after every firmware upgrade, then you would click calibrate now. And then I just wanted to show you briefly what the gamepad test looks like. So this is a good way to figure out if all your buttons and triggers are working properly, or if you have any kind of drift on your joystick. Unfortunately, if you are planning on using this with an iPhone 15 series device, you will need to get an Android device in order to do any of these things. Update the firmware, calibrate it, test it, any of that, because it just doesn't work with the iOS application. I really think overall this is a solid controller. If you don't mind the controller being in PlayStation mode in order to play any of your games on iOS, then you shouldn't have any issues with this controller at all. I really do hope that Gamesir develops the application on iOS to be compatible with this controller so that we can gain more of the functionality that Android users already have. But all that aside, overall it is a solid controller. And with that, that's all I have for this one. So if you have any questions about the controller, please hit me up down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.